Guys, Boxing Gossip here. Hope everyone's doing well. I know a good number of you enjoy the boxing betting videos. They're not for everyone, of course, but sometimes it makes for interesting conversation. And as boxing fans, even if we're discussing it from a betting angle, there's still some interesting back and forth about the fights in question. And I've had a number of messages recently asking me to look ahead to fights and to talk about fights where I see a potential gap in the market when it comes to the odds. And I wanted to talk about three separate fights in this that I do feel represents excellent value. And these odds were all verified the evening of the 13th of March via the Odds Checker website. So appreciate that odds are a moving target, and by the time you watch this video, the odds may no longer be available at these prices. But nevertheless, at the time of recording, they were, of course, correct and accurate. So let's talk about these three fights. And we're going to start with Brian Rose versus Jack Arnfield. Now, there's a number of reasons I strongly favour Jack Arnfield in this fight. Let's start by talking about size. Brian Rose is a guy who's been making light middleweight. When I've seen him fight above light middleweight, he looks small. He actually looks a tiny bit soft at the weight. He's against a guy in Jack Arnfield who's a really, really, really big, rangy, scopy middleweight. So you've got a size factor. Brian Rose has never been a puncher, even at light middleweight. So I suspect up at middleweight, we're going to find that the power is even less, doesn't carry up at all. He's going to be hitting bigger guys. When he hit the smaller guys at 154, he wasn't hurting them. We also talk about momentum in boxing. Jack Arnfield is a guy with real momentum at present. He beat John Ryder in what was definitely an upset. Then he went and fought on ITV4, I believe, and again scored a relatively dominant win. Whereas Brian Rose is a guy who is, if we're honest, in the autumn of his career, he's got a lot of miles on the clock. He suffered heavy losses. He suffered a few bad cuts in fights, I believe. He's taken a few beatings. He really got his arse handed to him when he fought Demetrius Andrade up at world title level. Was in a decent fight with Matthew Macklin, but if I recall correctly, was again unsuccessful in a tough fight there. And whilst Brian Rose is potentially a likeable individual, whilst he's a guy who's shown a lot of heart in the ring previously, I just feel that he is very much at the tail end of his career, and I think that moving up to middleweight is possibly a last roll of the dice because the guys are running out of ideas. Jack Arnfield, the younger, fresher, bigger guy, the guy with the momentum, the guy on the upwards trajectory. I make Jack Arnfield a real favourite in this fight. I really side with Jack Arnfield here. I think he's probably got something like a 75 to 80% chance of winning the fight. This is boxing, things happen, people get cut, people break hands, people get knocked out. But I think the chances of that against a light middleweight and a soft hitting light middleweight at that are low. And I think Jack Arnfield's style of boxing from range can see him win a points decision here. Arnfield to win the fight on its own is 4-5, and I think that's too close. Getting 4-5 on Jack Arnfield suggests that this is something close to a, maybe not a 50-50 matchup. I'm not sure the exact percentages, but certainly a 55-45 or a 60-40 matchup. And I think the odds are more in Jack Arnfield's favour than that. I suspect he's a guy who can go on and potentially challenge for a British title and that sort of level. And at middleweight, I'm not sure that Brian Rose is any longer at that sort of level. So for me, Jack Arnfield at 4-5 is a market that I'll look at. On the same evening, you have Jorge Linares versus Anthony Crolla. Now, I was successful in the first fight, one of my rare boxing betting tipping successes, in tipping Jorge Linares to win the fight. I just felt that Anthony Crolla had perhaps been slightly overrated by some of his wins. I felt that some of Anthony Crolla's better wins came against opponents who were somewhat unproven and unknown quantities, and I thought Jorge Linares was a guy who was well known at world level, a guy with elite skills, and a guy who could potentially dominate in what turned out to be a boxing match against Anthony Crolla. For me, Jorge Linares won that fight comfortably. He was the vastly superior operator in there in terms of skills and technique, and he won the fight a lot wider in my book than what we saw from the judges. He also answered a lot of questions. People thought Jorge Linares was someone who didn't have good stamina. People thought Jorge Linares was somebody who didn't have a good heart. Well, he won a 12-round fight. He fought on for all 12 rounds. And as I say, on my card, won the fight very, very wide indeed. Much wider than the judges had it. In a rematch, I see no reason to suspect a different result. I don't see how Crolla is going to add a different dimension to his game. I don't see where Crolla is going to find the extra, it's not an extra 1 or 2%, an extra 20% he needs to beat Jorge Linares. I think Jorge Linares will most likely be successful again. There are risks attached. Jorge Linares is going away from home. He's fighting on a home fighters card. We've seen all sorts of dubious judging decisions over the years, including the scoring in the first fight, which I thought was very dubious. So, there is risks attached. You've got to bear that in mind. But for me, 4-7 available on Jorge Linares is value, especially if you consider that he's already beaten Anthony Crolla and beaten him well. And for me, Crolla, who's a likeable fighter and a very likeable guy, is not the kind of guy who's going to reinvent himself and reinvent his style. He's not someone who's going to necessarily bring something completely new to the equation. We know what Crolla is, we know what he does. He's not got the technique to outbox Jorge Linares, and I think Jorge Linares is going to prove victorious again. So I actually like those two on the same night. I'd possibly be inclined to put them in a little double, actually. Jack Arnfield and Jorge Linares to win. I'm not sure what that's paying, potentially around a 2-1 mark, 4-5 on Arnfield, 4-7 on Linares. If you're better at odds than I am, leave a comment, tell me what you think that double would pay out at. But yeah, those are two selections I like. Relatively behind both of those guys in those fights. The other fight that I put down to talk about was actually Liam Williams versus Liam Smith. Now, the promoters of this bout are selling this as a classic 50-50 fight. And I'm not hating on this fight one bit. It's a fantastic fight. I'm really looking forward to it. It's competitive, it's high class, it's two all-action fighters, and it's two guys who are going to be involved in a great scrap, I'm sure. But what was interesting is I did a podcast when this fight was announced, and during that podcast I asked the guys in the chat, who are you picking to win this fight? And I think out of about 20 responses, every single one of the comments said Liam Williams. I think I'm right in saying the entire podcast panel and the weekly podcast we do also all picked Liam Williams. And I'm picking Liam Williams. Again, we've talked about momentum already in this video, but Liam Smith is coming off a heavy stoppage loss in what was his big chance against Canelo Alvarez. Whereas Liam Williams is an undefeated fighter who's on the way up and who's looking very, very good. I believe Liam Williams has the advantage in terms of one-punch power. I believe Liam Williams has the advantage in terms of boxing technique. Liam Smith, a very good fighter, high-class presser fighter, but is he somewhat predictable? Is he the Anthony Crolla versus Jorge Linares in this case? We can work out what he's going to do. Can Gary Lockett and Liam Williams work out a game plan to beat Liam Smith? And on balance, whilst it is a tight fight, I'm picking Liam Williams to win the fight. Now, what I find amazing here is Liam Williams is available at 11-10. Which suggests that Liam Smith is actually the favourite for this matchup. And I understand that. Liam Smith is the bigger name. Liam Smith has been at world title. He's had a world title. He's been involved in the higher profile fights. But based on a survey of the people who commented on my video, and based on my podcast panel, we have got a good 20-25 opinions of hardcore boxing fans. And I agree with their opinions. Nobody is picking Liam Smith to win. So where I'm in a position that out of a sample size of 100 people out of 25 people whose opinions I respect, when 100% of them are picking Liam Williams to win the fight, and Liam Williams is available at over evens, I'm going to take an interest. And I think at 11-10, there's enough value there for me to pick Liam Williams. I actually think Liam Williams should be a favourite in a close fight. If I was pricing this, I'd probably have Liam Williams 4-6. maybe 8 to 11, that sort of price. But to get odds against, to get over evens, I think is an opportunity that shouldn't be missed. So, I'm looking forward to the fight. It's going to be a good one. But I'll be betting on Liam Williams. Let me know your thoughts, people. Drop your comments in the section below about your thoughts on these selections that I've made in this video. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Do you think I'm going to lose money? I'm interested to have the discussion. Also, let me know any other picks that you've got for upcoming fights, and any betting angles that you see. Thanks for watching. As always, appreciate you guys taking the time to tune in. Please hit the thumbs up button if you've enjoyed this video to help me get more visibility on the channel. If you're new or you haven't done so before for whatever reason, do subscribe so you can check out my other stuff. Thank you.